Hello everyone. Today, as promised, I'm going to start my first tutorial on just picking up beads. Today I will be showing you how to pick up beads with different size brushes, and also a little bit of a powder to liquid ratio, so you can understand a little bit more how to pick up a nice consistency bead so that you can be able to do great application with. Today we're just going to be focusing on picking up the bead with the brushes, different sizes, understanding which side is best, which side is good, and what beads can each brush pick up, for beginners to intermediate, even those who are using bigger size brushes. So today I'll be using my own line, the size 10. This will be a very great practice for you guys. We're not going to be using any application. We're just going to be picking up beads, and I'll be showing you here the different type of beads that you can pick up and how to tell when you're picking up a good bead versus a bad bead, a dry or a wet bead. So you'll be able to understand that a little bit more. So when you do start working on an application, you'll be able to get the first part of it done. My brushes are definitely crimped. I do them personally myself for whenever I get them. Crimping means that the barrel is crimped, so it's a little bit flatter. I'll be able to pick up bigger beads. You can also use the round ones. All brushes will come round. They're perfectly fine. This is just going to be a tutorial on how to pick up beads, okay? So we're going to start with the size 10 brush, and of course our powder and our liquid is right here. First and foremost, a lot of you guys are using, are not understanding the liquid ratio. So I'm going to show you with a smaller brush. Of course, beginners, they use a smaller brush because it's less liquid to powder. So you have less to worry about, less to control. So it's very easy. That's why we start at 10. A lot of you guys are starting at 8. That's perfectly fine. I feel like a 10 is definitely a good way to grow into a brush, so you don't really waste money buying an 8. So if you use a brush, liquid to powder ratio, like this. This would be too wet. If you can see, this is too wet. So the moment you put this brush into the powder, it's going to absorb powder. The more liquid you have, the more it's going to absorb, the bigger bead you get. But also, it'll be a wetter bead if you don't pick up enough powder. If I pick up enough powder equivalent to this brush, the amount of monomer we have on here, then yes, we'll have a nice consistency bead. But if I don't pick enough powder, of course, it's going to be more monomer to less powder. So the ratio is going to be off. You got more monomer to less powder. So of course, that powder is going to be very wet. So in balance, if we pick up an equal amount of a perfect ratio of 50-50 of powder to acrylic, we'll have a nice bead that's not too wet and not too dry. So that's generally where you want to get to. But let's say if you're a beginner and you want more time to work with your bead, so I would recommend a 60-40 ratio. So when I say this, it's kind of hard to explain, because how do I know the 60-40 ratio? That's why we're doing this today. We're going to be picking up beads. This is what you should do as practicing. You just pick up beads so you can look at the powder, look how runny it is, and you'll eventually understand how much monomer you need to get that bead that you want. So if you want to, let's say I'm going to pick up a dry bead. So when you put it in, you use the brush, get the monomer. This is about a wet brush, okay? So when you pick up the powder, this will be a dry bead. And you can tell it's dry, right? Because you have not a lot of powder. If I were to pick up more powder with this, let's say I kept it longer, it'll be even drier. You know a dry bead, when you see the residue right there, you see that's trying to the monomer is trying to suck up as much as that's possible. It's because you didn't have a monomer. So this is a dry bead. See, when you put down, it's very dry. When you drag it, it stays, and it's a bead. So if I were to pick up a wet bead with this brush, this would be a wet bead. If you can tell, it still moves a little bit. It's still malleable. So when you put it down, you'll see it's more wet. So I had a lot of monomer in here. So sometimes when you see the bead, it still stays in place, but you see that it can still bend and move. And definitely when you put it right onto the finger or the nail, it's gonna bleed all over the place. Because we have it in a ball and it's on a brush, it looks stable. But that's what you have to understand about picking up beads. So if I were to pick up a perfect bead, which is liquid to monomer ratio, do you see the roundness? Yes, we have some residue here, but the moment we put it down, we lift up, it'll be fine. So it's more round and it's more sturdy. You see that? It's more sturdy, it's round. You want that round bead when you're picking up a bead, because when you put the nail onto the nail, there's gonna be a round cuticle area, and you'll be able to control it a little better in the roundness. So this is a nice bead. As you can notice, the longer I hold it on, the more it's gonna dry up. So our timing is different, everything. So when you are practicing this, you're consistently just picking up beads, and you see it, and you put it on. And this is some of my classes. I do this. I make students do this, so they can new students. And also, there's also a technique about picking up powder. A lot of you guys are probably going in like this. You do not want to get powder up to here. You see how this is the base of the brush. There's not gonna be a lot of monomer here because we're gonna be getting rid of the monomer. So of course we want to get the bead right here at the tip of the brush where it's nice and soft. Okay, so if you go in a vertical area, you're not gonna get that round bead. You're gonna spread the powder all the way up here. We want a nice round bead. So of course we do a position like this where we'll be able to put in an angle and just put light pressure, and you get the round bead. Okay, you see, that's perfect. The transition is very smooth. So the round bead, we are basically putting it at an angle, and we're just gonna put a little bit of pressure. The brush is going to bend, and as it bends, it picks up more powder equally around towards this area. So that makes it a lot easier to pick up a bead. Definitely you don't want to drag it like this. You see what I mean? This is not a good bead. It's very flat, it's all over the place. We do not want a bead that has powder on the other side, because you're getting excess acrylic that when you drop the bead, it's not gonna be able to all here. And if you don't clean your brush and you try to work with it, this will be excess powder that will be stuck into your brush, okay? So we have to understand that. To understand that, we have to actually play with the powder. I tell a lot of my followers, I get a lot of questions. How do I do this? How do I do this? I just say play with it. This is what I mean when I say play with it. So you're gonna be sit there and you're gonna consistently pick up beads like that. Pick up dry beads. Pick up wet beads. See, wet beads definitely you're gonna pick up more. There's more monomer, it picks up bigger bead. Just because your brush is small does not mean that you can't pick up a big bead. You just have to get it wetter. And this bead, I can wait for a couple seconds and it'll be actually dry. And that's also your timing. There's the beads. This is a 10. So a 10 you're mainly gonna be using on short nails, medium short nails. Great for fills. Definitely a great brush. Definitely because I have crimped it so it has the ability to pick up a bigger bead. You have a round brush, you might not be able to pick up a bigger bead. So we're gonna do this a couple more times, and you do this as much times as you need for you to understand when you have a dry bead compared to when you have a wet bead and when it's gonna be a perfect bead. So that is up to you. It's definitely practice. The rounder the bead, of course, it's gonna be a lot better, right? And that's how we're practicing this. So I'm gonna show you guys what a wet bead is. You see, if you look at it, it's very wet. A nice dry, it's trying to marble. There's the more monomer than there is acrylic on this brush right now. On this acrylic now, see, it's wet. You see that? That means it's wet. So when you place it, it's gonna go across better. This is what you're trying to achieve right here. The perfect liquid to powder ratio. And the ratio could be anything. The ratio could be anything. As long as you have keeping the powder to liquid ratio perfect, you'll get it to your liking. And definitely a little bit of practice, a little bit of time. So that was our 10 brush. So we move to our 12 brush. Right here, same brush. I crimped this a little bit more, so it's more crimped. Definitely a bigger base. We're definitely gonna be able to pick up bigger beads. So now our ratio is gonna change because this brush is gonna soak up more monomer. So as you move up to a 12 brush, when you're comfortable with your 10 and you can upgrade, you've understood powder to liquid ratio, then you can move up. Don't move up on brush size just because you feel like you want to or it's gonna help you do bigger beads, okay? You're definitely gonna get comfortable with your brush. So of course, our 12 brush will pick up a rounder bead. And this is about a perfect bead, okay? There's just enough marbling, just enough monomer, just enough acrylic. You'll know when there's too much monomer in your acrylic because you'll see clear areas. You'll see it's still trying to marble and all that stuff. So same thing you do if you're using a 12. Let's do a dry bead. See, a dry bead would definitely be flatter because you didn't have enough monomer to powder. And yes, I could keep this, if I could keep this into my acrylic a little longer to pick up more, but if I pick up more, it's gonna be too dry. So the moment I drop this onto my nail or finger, it's gonna be drying already. See, it's already stiff, and you won't be able to work with it. So our goal is to get a nice consistency, a nice bead, for that the ratio to be 50-50 or 60-40, whichever you're used to working with. Cleaning our brush, and of course, this is our 12 brush if you're using a 12. And remember, picking up beads is definitely a very important skill, something that should be practiced, because you're going to be doing this every time you do application, and you need to look at the powder. You need to understand, how much time do I have? Is this powder wet? Is this powder dry? Is this bead going to dry on me? And the time that takes you to go from liquid to powder to nail, there's a difference there. The moment you come in here, it's the time has start ticking. So you definitely can't stall. You definitely have to understand it, and you have to bring it to the nail right away. A lot of you guys are saying, my acrylic dries right away when I put on the bead. You're probably holding on it too long, and the time it takes you to go from the powder to the finger is too long. So it's dried out. You probably didn't have enough monomer. This is our size 12. And I want to move to the size 14. Okay, definitely a bigger brush, longer, so you're definitely gonna be able to pick up more. This brush, you probably can do 1 beading, 2 beading on long nails easily. And you can tell by the size of the bead that it can pick up. It's bigger, it's rounder. Of course, this doesn't matter, because once we drop it on there, it'll start to marble, okay? Look at the marbling around this powder. Right now, if you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I wanted to do these tutorials on YouTube, not on my YouTube Live, not on my Facebook Live, because that's high definition. I want you to see this, okay? So even any brush, you can still pick up a dry bead. See, the drier it is, the flatter it is, okay? This is dry bead, and I can go back in there, pick up more acrylic, of course. But this bead is not gonna be able to be efficient for me. When I put this down, I have less time to work with it. I want to achieve this type of bead. And for you guys that are using it, when you dip it in here, you're gonna get liquid. And you use the dampening dish and you're gonna squeeze out. So if you want a dry bead, you just pull longer, so it removes more monomer. If you want a wetter bead, you just pull less and you have a wetter brush. So you gotta find that consistency that's good for you to the powder. So that's how you play with it. So I have my powder control down, liquid to monomer ratio down. I know how to pick up a bead like this. Fairly easy. You can do it too with the right amount of practice, consistently, and time spent with the acrylic. And it's definitely a very underrated technique that maybe you never see people do tutorials on. And I'm not even advocating onto a nail. I'm worried about is picking up beads and understanding the beads. So if you are practicing this technique over and over and over, just like how I am doing, you will have an understanding of powder to liquid ratio, and you will definitely understand what your brush can handle and how much powder to liquid your brush can handle. So you start to get used to how this brush works, and whenever you work, you're consistent with it. I recommend doing this as a beginner anytime you get into industry, and even if you're getting a new brush, you should do this. Let's say you're upgrading from a 10 to a 12 to a 12 to a 14, you should definitely do this so that you can understand how much monomer your brush is, because sometimes you might jump to a new brush and you might have been comfortable with the other ratio. This ratio might be different. Of course, we can move to the 16, which is one of my favorites. I use the 16 throughout my whole career, but like I said, I've been using these brushes in my sets on my lives on Facebook also, because I promised my viewers that anything I bring them to their platform that I would be able to use myself. But the 16 is definitely my favorite, arguably a little bigger of a brush, and of course, it will definitely pick up a bigger bead like that. As you can see, it's a nice big bead, right consistency, not a lot of powder over here, and this will be able to do pretty much anything. You can do extendo nails within two beads with this. I have done a full tip nail, 1 bead with this, and definitely a lot of people think bigger size means bigger beads. No, if I wanted a bigger bead, I can increase my liquid ratio and make sure that I pick up more acrylic. See, I've increased my ratio of liquid, and I've also increased it how much longer I left it in there to pick up a bigger bead. So yes, and even if this, I can also pick up a small bead. Depending how much of the brush you dip in there, for a smaller bead, for smaller nails, and that goes in hands with everything. All I do is use the corners. So the key to this is picking up a round bead. We want to achieve a round bead. The round bead helps us with the cuticle area. A lot of beginners have problems with the cuticle area. If you drop a round bead, it'll be round like the cuticle, so you'll be able to tap it and make sure it gets to the cuticle area nice and clean. And this is why tutorials like this should be available, because anywhere you go, you're gonna see them just show you liquid to powder and also right on the nail. They don't really show you the in-between that goes into it. And as you focus on my YouTube, I will have other videos following up that you can grow as a beginner. So after this, I will show you another tutorial in the future in a couple of days when I make it, of how to go this to this to this onto the nail. I don't want to do too much. I just want you to focus on this. So if you're a beginner and you want to grow with my YouTube channel, the content I'm going to be posting on here tutorial wise will be a learning curve. You'll be learning with these videos. You can watch these videos many times over and over and over until you get it. Then when the application video comes out, it'll be able to link you to the application video. Then you watch the application video. Then it'll link you over to the shaping video. You watch shaping video. It'll link you over to the cuticle work video. So basically the whole process of how I do nails will be split into small increments, so you can focus on one area at a time instead of seeing the whole thing and try to rewind or try to grasp everything at once. At the beginning, you want to just focus on all your attention, your time on one process at a time, so you can learn consistently. And like always, I appreciate you guys tuning in to this tutorial, and I hope this helps a lot of you guys. And I hope this, because I have been promising a lot of my viewers I would start doing more YouTube content, and this week is when I'm going to start producing tutorial YouTube content. And this is for beginners, but eventually in the future I will also be doing more design stuff. But right now, my platform is all about beginners and helping anybody that needs this kind of help, because this is not shown often, and this should be very focused. And I appreciate all you guys for joining me. And of course, like always, my brushes are available in the description below. There'll be a link for my IG store where you can purchase these brushes. If you like crimp brushes, I crimp them, each and every one of them by hand. And like always, there's gonna be more and more content in the future coming soon, more and more products. And I thank you everybody for joining in, and I hope this helps. And if it does, please hit subscribe, turn off that notification, and you'll be seeing more and more content when it comes. I like to make these as it goes, so you guys can enjoy these videos. Thank you so much for joining Nail Dad quick picking up bead tutorial and understanding liquid to powder ratio, which is very important.